60 knots.
Check.
V1. Rotate.
Are the mics on?
The mics are on.
And hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Blue Skies podcast. Today is episode number 8 with 3 special guests, MK, Yasna, and Kaitlin. All 3 of them are retired junior board members and really good mentors and friends of ours. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
So to start off, something really simple. Let's just get the audience to know who you guys are. Let's just go around the room.
Who you ladies are.
Who you ladies are. I do that so many times in the podcast. It's actually really
This is why we have this podcast, ladies and gentlemen, to fix this.
Yeah, to educate. So let's go around the room. Everybody just tell me a little bit about yourselves, a quick introduction, your name, your current role, and what you trained or studied in to get there. Yasna, you can go first.
Hi, I'm Yasna Tayyib. I'm an in-flight operations manager with Jazz Aviation, and I'm finishing up my flight training at Spectrum Airways in Burlington. And my education is a bit of a windy road. I started in Honors Life Sciences at McMaster University and then moved along to Conestoga College to pursue my flight training. And now we're here.
My name is Kaitlin Thomas. I'm currently a first officer at Air Canada, and I studied at Seneca College, actually, and I did the Honors of Bachelor Aviation Technology program.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mahnoor and I manage parts and logistics for aircraft maintenance at Porter Airlines, and I have an advanced diploma in aviation. I also did my bachelor's in aviation business admin, and currently I'm pursuing my master's in aviation.
As you can all see, 3 very capable and qualified women in very distinct fields, but all within the aviation sector.
So let's explore that a little more and learn about your individual career choices. What specifically got you into that role? Mahnoor, you mentioned that you're with Porter now, supply chain and inventory. Not always what people imagine when they think of aviation. How specifically did you end up there through your education?
So I went to college for aviation management diploma, and then they had a co-op program. And as part of the co-op program, I got hired with Air Georgian in their parts department. And I realized that I'd never known this side to aviation, and I really actually enjoyed it. So I learned everything about parts that go on the airplane. What do they do? What happens when they fail? A lot of investigative work, a lot of quality reliability work. And I really liked what I did there. And then sort of from there, I pursued my education, mainly focused on aircraft maintenance and supply chain. And here I am today.
At any point during that, did you ever think of a more traditional role in aviation, such as being a pilot or a flight attendant? Or did you know that you always wanted to explore the other side of aviation?
I initially wanted to be a pilot, but at the time that I started, I did not know the resources that were available to me. So just because, we couldn't afford for me to go to flight school, that's why I'd gone to college and not pursue the flight training. But today, I think I'm glad that I picked the career I did, but I'm definitely planning on getting my pilot's license in the future.
That's awesome.
That's true. That is very exciting stuff right there. I hope you're looking forward to it. Yasna, you are currently managing in-flight operations, pursuing flight training, and working in research. How do you juggle it all? What is the secret to time management?
I don't juggle it. Because there are certain sacrifices that need to be made, and I've learned that the hard way over the last few years. But it's been really, really interesting because as I was doing flight training and still am, in a way it can feel a little bit siloed, where it's like, okay, I'm becoming a pilot, surrounded by pilots, and that's all. And then all of a sudden you go into the real world and you're not working with just pilots. You're working with flight attendants and maintenance and stock and oh my gosh, everyone, right? So juggling it all has been worth it because I get to put myself into a better position one day when I am flying or when I'm in a different role. But I think the key to time management for me has been figuring out what I really like to do, and the only way I've been figuring out what it is I want to do is by trying everything and learning what I don't want to do.
Did you start with the in-flight operations and then pursue flight training because of an influence by being in the industry? Or is that something you always had in the back of your mind?
No, it was a bit weird. My career has kind of been split between Air Cadets and being in the Royal Canadian Air Force Reserves, working with cadets. And then also on the professional side, I was actually a summer student with Northern Lights as their summer admin student. From there, I joined Jazz because I was like, it's COVID. Let me figure out how an airline works. So I became an administrative assistant for the flight operations department. Never thought I would be in that role. And then from there, I got into a coordinator role for in-flight. They took me under their wing. And then I went into the in-flight operations manager role. So I did not think that was the route for me, but it ended up being the right way.
And are you happy with that choice, or do you wish at times that you started your flight training sooner and stuck with that? Or how do you feel about the way it panned out?
It's a lot of trial and error and finding kind of what you love to do. To do that, you have to figure out what you don't love to do. The other thing that I've learned is that life isn't a race and your career isn't a race. I wanted to be flying in my early 20s, mid 20s. And not only is that not how the cards panned out, but it's also not how I would have wanted them to pan out now that I know what I know now. I mentioned, Air Cadets and the reserves, but also my professional life. And when it came to flight training, I found it to be a little bit siloed in the sense that you were trained to be a pilot, you were around instructors and pilots, and it kind of ended there. But then when I joined Jazz, I kind of began learning about that first layer of, okay, what does it mean to work with not only pilots, but flight attendants and maintenance and airports and operations control and scheduling. But then there was a second layer that came with it when it came to management, and that was working with human resources and labor relations and collective agreements and unions and accessibility, which all loops into safety management systems, the big S word. And then also with management and being in my role at Jazz as being an on-call manager, which contributes to decision-making. And every single day is different, which is what I'm very grateful for. So I guess to answer your question, I don't juggle it all, but all of it is required to build myself into the best person and professional that I can be down the road. And that's that.
So you're growing yourself in various pathways, I guess, in this industry, so to say. So in-flight operations, your flight training, and the research work that you do with WISA. For students who are unsure of which path to follow, the fact that you have your feet in so many different pools, what advice would you have for those students? Do you recommend that they do something similar to you, where they do a little bit of everything and figure out what they like? And another follow-up to that would be, do you see yourself after flight training maybe switching off from the managing in-flight operations to pursuing flying full-time as a pilot?
Great questions. I'm writing them all down. Okay. Would I encourage students to do a bit of everything? Yeah, I think there's a fine line in a way. I think MK and Kaitlin can agree. There's a fine line between doing it all but also becoming a master of what you want to be versus jack of all trades, master of none, or whatever they say. I would encourage trying everything, especially when you're a student. Literally the worst that'll happen is that you hate it and you don't do it anymore. But you meet people along the way, and then we all know that like in aviation, you have to leave smelling like roses. One of my mentors taught me that. And it's such a small industry that whatever you do or don't do, you need to leave on good terms. You got to make sure that that's a big part of professionalism. So I would recommend doing a little bit of everything, trying it all, and then having the privilege to pick and choose what you do want to do from everything that you've tried. And then after flight training, yeah, the goal is to fly on the line. I'd love to. The ultimate goal is to be in the training department. I'd love to be instructing, teaching, creating, while also flying the line. So that's the long-term goal.
I like that you mentioned it's not a race, and that's something you've had to learn over time. I do want to come back to that point later on, but thanks for sharing. Let's move to Kaitlin. You mentioned that you're now with Air Canada, but you were also a student one day as a flight training student, and you were also an instructor. So how did all of those experiences shape who you are today as a pilot?
Yeah, I think it all adds up at the end of the day. From a student, I mean, you learn from your mistakes, and I think that carries through your whole career. If you're not analyzing and actually taking everything that you're doing and trying to be better, then you're going to be stagnant. And in this profession, like, we're always trying to be better. We're always trying to learn and grow. I learned a lot of that instructing. I think that's when I actually learned how to fly, when you learn your limits, which was really valuable. And when someone's trying to kill you every day, all day, you really get some thicker skin on you. So I definitely found that all the experiences that I've had and all the jobs that I've had leading up to this point have all kind of accumulated and have just helped make me a more all-around person, an employee and pilot. And yeah, grateful for all of it.
Kaitlin, you chose the instructing route after graduating. Another famous one is flying up north. Was that a consideration for you, and did you ever have to decide between the two?
Yes, those are definitely the two options that are probably easiest straight out of school. I always knew I wanted to do the instructing route because I wanted to get the pick time just to make life easier to get the frozen ATPL signed off. So before fully graduating Seneca, I had started my instructor rating. However, I graduated in 2020, which was peak COVID. So it took a while. Like, obviously there were no jobs in up north. Down here, like, there's nothing. So it took a little bit of extra time to get my instructor rating finally done. And once it was done, there's still no jobs. There were no instructing jobs, which is rare. But I just kind of took a look around, and it's I personally just didn't really want to go up north. It wasn't a type of lifestyle that I wanted for myself. And so I just stuck it out. I didn't want to move and just to not have a job at that time. So I went through kind of what I call a quarter life crisis. I worked in a factory at Crayola, boxing crayons to make ends meet and to pay the bills, and until I got my first instructing job. And then I was managing 2 jobs at the same time instructing eventually when things started to pick up more. And then the rest is kind of history, but you just kind of do what you got to do.
Is there anything you change about your pathway to get where you are now?
I don't think so. I really enjoyed instructing, and I gained so many valuable lessons from there. And I really gained a lot of confidence in myself and my abilities because, like I said, you really learn how to fly at that point. Like, doing your commercial is great and all, but instructing, if you have to teach it to someone, you have to know it yourself. And being responsible for someone else, and you're training the next pilot, the next generation. So if you don't put in your all, or if you just do kind of a half-assed job, what's going to happen when they go solo? That's on you, So I took the responsibility with me, and I tried my best. Hopefully my students don't hate me. But yeah, I'm very grateful for the path that I've taken and all the experiences that have come along with it.
And now that you are flying commercially, what's something that your training did not prepare you for? Something you didn't expect?
I think the schedule kind of took me by surprise. It is hard on the body to go from an early morning to a late night or vice versa. And just learning how to take care of yourself in those times, trying to eat during the day. It sounds really silly, but if you work a 12 or 14-hour day and you're back to back to back, it is hard to eat if you don't have a plan, if you don't have food with you. Your sleep schedule, trying to adjust that, trying to sleep during the day or sleep, at weird hours. It definitely took me a little bit to learn. I'm still learning all the best practices that work for me. And yeah, they definitely didn't teach that in flight school, because flight school is kind of normal hours, essentially.
The changes in your circadian rhythm is something that is common that I've heard from other airline pilots as well. How do you cope with the schedule changes and your personal life?
That's a great question. I mean, it's still a work in progress, depending on the type of flight I do. I find I try to stay on local time zone. I try to get 8 to 9 hours of sleep every night. Try to eat when I can, as silly as that sounds. And then depending on the pairing that I did or the flights that I did, I might need a day of recovery when I get home just to become a human again. But once I'm human again, I can go about my personal life and do everything that I would normally do and be more present with my friends and family and whatnot. But yeah, it's just kind of trial and error, essentially. And everyone is different, and you can get advice from 100 different people, and you'll find 100 different ways how to do it. And you just got to find what works for you.
This might be a personal question, but do you come from a family of pilots?
I don't. I am the first in my family.
So how have you found that with now being at an airline job? Is it hard to explain your schedule sometimes to other family members that might think you're going to be present in all these events?
Absolutely. It has definitely been a bit of a struggle at times, and it is hard to explain because it's such a unique job and schedule. And there are people who don't understand, and that's okay. It's like, I can only do so much. I try to make what I can, and a lot of people are really supportive still and like are happy that I'm doing what I love to do. And you just try to make it work, and you just try to find alternatives or ways to kind of make ends meet regardless of your schedule, I guess.
And more of a technical question for some of our listeners that might not be fluent in how airline schedules work. What's the light at the end of the tunnel? Will this be your schedule for the rest of your life at Air Canada? How does that look?
No, so there's a lot of different ways to go about it, especially at the company that I'm at. You know, there's reserve and then a block. So reserve, you're on call essentially, and then a block is you have a set schedule. And then from there, depending on the plane you fly, will depend on kind of how much or how little you fly and what kind of routes you do. So, of course, like transatlantic flying is a different schedule than, or like long haul flying is a different schedule than short haul. So on reserve, you would get minimum days off of like 12 days a month. And then a block, that can obviously vary, and it's all seniority based as well. So the more senior you get, theoretically, the better your schedule gets. So that's kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. And you can kind of choose what plane and what position you want to be based on what you value. So if you want lifestyle, you can choose one where you're more senior and you can actually choose your schedule a bit more, as opposed to like if you want to be, you know, captain as quick as you can, you might end up being like a lower, like a junior person on that plane, and so you're kind of sacrificing lifestyle. So it all depends on what works for you and what you want at the end of the day.
So Mahnoor, you mentioned that you're pursuing your MBA now, your master's. How is that going to help bridge business and operations in this side of the industry, and what even led you to that decision of pursuing further education?
I think what I think about education, it's very important because it keeps you current on the topics that are happening in the industry right now. And because I'm doing my master's, I see how the research that I do with my university is a lot more applicable to what I do in daily lives. I'm able to build models based on the work I do. I'm able to test the models. I'm able to, make processes efficient as well. So I'm someone who thrives on learning new things and, investing in myself, because I think as women, it's important for us to build our own story before we go and have a future and start building our family story, right? Because you cannot pour from an empty cup.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the autonomy is very important, and we have such strong women in aviation and aerospace. But sometimes I feel like, maybe cultural norms or taboo topics or familial influences or whatever, it can almost transfer to those professional skills that you do or don't grow. Like, I know I have dealt with being like a people pleaser, right? Just saying yes, even if in my mind, I know it's a no, but then I just make it happen. And in that sense, I jeopardize and sacrifice things that are going for me to make something happen for someone else, which is amazing if your cup is already full and you're able to give from that overflow. But if not, then you're putting yourself in a tough position. Sometimes it's needed to get that new role or get a new opportunity or build a new skill. But other times it can be a detriment in a way, but it's a big learning lesson. So it's a positive in the end.
I think I can definitely relate to the people pleaser aspect of this. So I used to say yes to everything, right? It doesn't even matter, and I would burn myself out. I think the more education I've had, and not only with my master's, but the articles I read, the books I read, the daily news that comes out. I think that now if I say no to something, I'm much more confident in myself that, okay, you know what, I have the knowledge, I have the background that I can say no to this project, I can say no to this task. So I think it sort of leads education into more confident decision making as well, because now you know that nobody can tell me that you do not know what you're talking about, because I do. I know this time I've spent learning and studying. So the decision I've made today has full backing of all the work I've done.
And Kaitlin, like you spoke about like boundaries and limits and learning them as an instructor and now as an Air Canada FO. And like, have you ever like felt that way as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And to speak for both of like what you guys were talking about, I think knowledge is power, and the more education and the more tools you can put in your toolbox helps you at the end of the day in either your job and your personal life, no matter what aspect. And yeah, everything like you guys said.
One point that I want to kind of throw out there and get all three of your advice on, something that I've heard amongst conversations with younger students in this industry is the idea that, and Yasna, you mentioned it, that life is not a race. However, at least for me specifically with my background, sometimes this is a concept that is harder to understand. Mahnoor, you mentioned building yourself and your confidence as a person before you feed that into starting a family or a future. Tying those two concepts together is a tough one, because you want to work on yourself, but then sometimes as a woman, you're given a timeline as well. What are all three of your thoughts on that, or any advice, or what's helped you overcome that?
I think as women, we are hard on ourselves. And Trisha, I can relate to you because we're both from similar backgrounds. And I think that for us, it's sort of been a race. You know, more than often we get compared with other people's children and, you know, they're doing this and they're doing that. But I think what needs to happen is you stop, you take a look and you're like, oh my God, like I'm living the dream I prayed for 5 years ago, right? So this is something I did this weekend. I had a very busy week. I had a very rewarding week and I was tired and I said, you know, am I doing enough? Is this enough? You know, like what am I doing? And then I realized that I'm living the dream that I prayed for 5 years ago, but I never stopped to, you know, take it all in. Like I'm never in the moment to enjoy it, because I'm always like, okay, what's next? What's next? Like, what am I going to do next? And how am I going to be compared with this? So I think what we need to realize is that, you know, we need to take a breath, go for a walk or listen to a podcast and you know, just think back to 5 years ago, that 5 years ago, you would have been, you know, very happy to be where you are today, and just live in the moment.
I mean, yeah, I personally am a very competitive person. So comparing myself to everyone else, especially like the people I went to school with or other people my age, it's so easy to get wrapped up in, you know, who's doing better, who's further. And like MK said, what am I doing wrong? Or like, am I not doing enough? And it's so easy to get wrapped up and to be so hard on yourself. I'm not sure if that's every woman I've spoken to say that. I don't know if it's everybody in the industry. I can't speak for that, but it is hard to see the bigger picture. And you do have to sit down and actually celebrate the milestones, celebrate the accomplishments along the road, because it's like, this is your life. If you're not enjoying it, if you're not having fun as you go through this career, you're going to burn yourself out. You're not, you know, you're going to resent the process as opposed to like really enjoying it for what it's worth. It's a lot easier said than done. I fully understand, but you do have to just like take yourself out, look at yourself, and is it working for me? Yes or no? What changes do I have to make for myself? And just ignore other people.
Something I've learned along my journey is that people will have something to say. Either way, whether you do something good, they will say something to you. If you do something bad, they will definitely say something to you. So you might as well do what you want to do and live happily.
See, it's even tougher when it's family that has something to say, or at least, the niche market that may be or may not be. You're right. To ignore people is probably the better choice in the long term, but it's hard when it comes from somebody that you might value in your life. Yasna, did you have something to add, or did I cut you off?
No, I agree fully with what you're saying. And I think like getting raised a certain way definitely has an impact as well. Like I know that there's so many girls, and I'm from Afghanistan, so I know there's a big kind of like for a lot of Afghans, it's, marriage comes first and kids and career doesn't really come. But I was raised in such an open-minded household, my parents, that like never once was that brought up. It was always education. It was always like the professional goals. And, but then having been raised like that, then you can support other people who might be in the same shoes and help them navigate a tough time and give them other resources to provide them with a little bit more light at the end of the tunnel in a way. But I think it also goes without saying that it's such a cheesy line, but like you are who you surround yourself with, and like you need to find people who you surround yourself with, whether it's junior board at Northern Lights or at work or at school or your friends, like people who are at least like-minded within in the sense of goals and aspirations, so that when you do trip and fall, you can get up, but you also have support and people know how much it means to you to get up and keep going, instead of telling you, oh, it's okay, like no worries. Like that's not advice that anyone wants, right? Like you want tangible, proper advice, and the only way you're going to get tangible advice is by surrounding yourself by badass people. That's it. That's the only way, right? Because you yourself are such a strong individual. We're a strong woman, and Ariane, you're a strong man. But that way you can be a resource for others, and then the comparisons become a little less loud and your goals become kind of replace that.
Kaitlin, can I ask, when you were a flight student, how many men were in your class? Or sorry, let me actually ask the reverse. How many female were in your class cohort?
I believe we started with 7 or 8, and we ended up graduating with 3.
So how did that influence your time as a flight student? Being surrounded with so many men in your class, and that also being your first experience and exposure to the industry.
Yeah, I went into it like we all know it's a male-dominant industry. That wasn't a surprise. It was nice to see, of course, other women pursuing the career as well. Honestly, I had a great group of people that we went to school with. It was like a little family. So it wasn't so much like, oh, you're a girl, like we're not going to talk to you kind of thing. It's like they kind of became my brothers and we were family at the end of the day. We spent so much time together in flight school that it's really hard not to. I did feel like I had to work probably 3 times harder than my male counterparts just to get that credibility and to kind of get to the same point. And throughout my career, you kind of feel like you always have to prove yourself to other people in order for people to take you legitimately, which is unfortunate, but I just put my head down. I got the work done. I knew where I wanted to be at the end of the day, and you make ends meet.
Aviation being such a small world is a phrase that I feel we've all heard many times in this career. Have either one of you found it a difficult one to adhere to, in the sense that have you ever found yourself having to change your behaviors or your personality, how you may speak or come across, in order to make sure you always leave a lasting positive impression?
I think yes, to a certain extent. I think it comes down to professionalism, like you were saying. There are times where I personally have bitten my tongue and have not spoken up per se, but you kind of have to pick and choose your battles, I would say, at the end of the day. Like, is it really worth potentially burning a bridge just to get your point across, or does everything still work operationally within everyone's jobs? Like, are we still doing what we need to do at the end of the day without compromising anything, without jeopardizing safety? Like, just, is it worth it? You still need to stay true to yourself, because otherwise, if you're just a full chameleon all the time, like, you might go crazy. You do need to put your foot down, and you need to know where that line is to put your foot down, but you do have to pick and choose battles and what's worth it at the end of the day.
I think from a leadership perspective, what I would say is that I am very passionate about the team that I have, right? So I've gone into meetings where I'm talking about, pay scales, or I'm talking about raises. And those are the meetings where you will see, a little bit voice rising. You will see counter arguments. So I think it depends. So like Kaitlin said, like you have to pick and choose your battles. And then in those meetings, you will see that, you know, the leaders speak up for their team, and they're very well prepared when they're speaking up for their team. Other times when you're more in a gathering where it's an open conversation and it's just more of a discussion, rather you presenting something of a budget and things like that, then you can have a nice conversation and still stay true to yourself, right? Because whatever you're talking, it's still the knowledge and experience you have you're backing with. It depends in what environment and how you say it.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that I agree with MK and Kaitlin. I think I use my personality traits that are authentic to me to advocate as best I can for myself and for others. Like one thing that I, you know, from the JV, from cadets, from work, whatever, like giving credit where credit is due. It's so important that however small or big the idea is, I have to, whenever I bring it up, I'll say, oh, and MK had this awesome idea, XYZ. I'm bringing it up. It's my voice, but the credit is where it's due, right? Or, oh, like Kaitlin mentioned this during a call or whatever, XYZ. And I also feel like it goes back to the fundamentals of your personality, and that's really what shines through. Like, if you're fundamentally a good person and kind, and you care about people, and you can communicate, and you can lead, then that really will shine through. And even when you mess up, because you will mess up, and I've made a lot of mistakes, but even when you do, people know who you are, and they'll help you. They'll want to help you get up. They'll want to help you grow. Whereas, you know, if you're not really a team player, then who's your team going to be, right? When something goes wrong, which will happen.
I think it's important for us to empower, you know, whoever we interact with. It doesn't have to be the younger generation or whoever you're in the room with. They should leave that room thinking, you know, that was a meaningful conversation, whether it was a very passionate conversation or it was more of a normal conversation. And I think that from Yasna and I perspective, being leaders and, you know, being leader of the teams that we are, both of us have really bigger teams. You know, your team should feel that no matter what happened at the end of the day, regardless of my leader's personality traits, I know that, you know, she or he and they've got my back. So at the end of the day, I have a leader who's, I know for a fact, I've made many mistakes, you know, and Yasna and I often discuss things and we talk about, you know, our days and how when some days are good, some days are not. I know for a fact that when I'm making a decision, even though it's a wrong one, I know that I've got my leader to stand behind me no matter what happens. And that's sort of the pay it forward that I do to my team, right? So even if something happens, I'm there to stand in between them to make sure that I take whatever is come my way, and then I give them very meaningful feedback. So tomorrow they're not afraid to come back to me to say, hey, MK, you know, something happened and can we talk about it? Of course we can, right? All of us are human. Some days are good, some days are not. We're all going to make mistakes. It's just important to know that, you know, someone's got your back. So
there's a solution to everything. But at the end of the day, like, you remember who supported you in really tough times. And I think, you know, managing flight attendants, you know, there's so many things that go wrong and life happens. Life is life. And you're a human first. And then you're, you know, an employee. And then you're a member of the JB. And then you do all these things. So being a strong shoulder for people to lean on is important.
And then when you say a small world, I think that's when this comes in, because it's a small world. So people will remember that, you know, I had Yasna to rely on all these years ago. So they just, like, I think people never forget the act of kindness you do. So if you see someone 10 years from now on, but they will remember that one small thing you did for them. So
it seems like some things you guys said to round out, and it kind of all leads to how to be a good leader. The first one was understand when to say no and know where that line is. The second one, it seemed like own up to your mistakes. If something happened, you know, take credit for it. And if something good happened that someone else did, then give them the credit for it as well. Share that responsibility, and build up your reputation so people in the industry know who you are and they can trust your choices, your decisions. I think that's some pretty good advice right there.
without the
So it seems like you guys learned a lot as you went in your own separate journeys. One question I had for all of you is, as you did this and you slowly climbing the ladder still, anytime you fell back a few steps, how did you guys kind of make your way back? How did you find that motivation to keep going?
I didn't for the longest time. I went through a rough patch and it took me a year to tell one person what happened. And then from there, it felt like so much lighter, even though at first, I couldn't even bear thinking about anyone else knowing what happened. And then it feels lighter. And then you discover like, oh, like the world literally does not revolve around me. Everyone else has experienced something like this before as well. And it's fixable. So I think you really have to, again, surround yourself with really cool people that will motivate you to not only get back up, but get up stronger and move it forward.
So I think something I'll add here is right when I thought my career was going at the very peak and I thought I was learning, I was moving forward, COVID time, I got laid off, right? And at the time, like, you're going through something that nobody ever has. So even if you do share with someone, they're going through the same thing that you're going through, right? Like some people felt it more than others. And when I got laid off, I thought I'm done. And it took me 2 months of constantly bashing myself that I should have picked a different career. I could have done this. I could have listened to my parents and became a doctor, right? So after those 2 months, I realized that, you know what? No, I have an option. So that's how I got into my bachelor's program, actually, because I was recent graduate from Georgian. They have a pathway into the bachelor's and they waived my admission fee. And I applied for the program and I got my bachelor's, and I'm proud I did that.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think kind of wrapping up what both of you said, like having a good support system around you, like the junior board was great because there's so many incredible people that you're surrounded by that you can look to someone to your left or to your right for motivation. Everyone here, it's like, oh my God, like I could never compare myself to you guys. But that kind of gives you a bit of a kick to like, okay, like if these people can do it, I can do it. Having a good mentor, someone you can reach out to helps a lot to be like, hey, I don't know if I'm feeling good about this or I'm really questioning if this is viable. And just having someone you can go to and talk to about stuff like that, because it's hard in this industry. You need to be adaptable and it's easier said than done, but there's so many moving parts and you're going to be kicked down so much and it is hard. But if you have the people around you and the resources, it helps get back on the right track.
I think that the inaugural of Junior Board came at a perfect time. And the reason why I say that is because it was right out of COVID. So it was 2022, right? We interviewed and then we got the call. And back then there was so much uncertainty amongst all of ourselves. And I think that, very quickly she reached out. We met up, like our first meeting was in a library. She reached out and then very quickly we became one team. And I think in that time, like I cannot think of a more important time for us to have been on that junior board, rather like the time that we were on, because we were coming out of COVID. There was a lot of questions that we had, like a lot of things that, we would have, like we needed answers to. Joining the junior board, like gave us like, a form of unity. We're learning board governance. Like we felt part of something. We started doing so many things all together that I think that was just a perfect time, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, it's great that we've segued into the junior board because we did want to ask about what the junior board meant to you before you even applied. Is that something that you were always looking for, the three of you? Were you looking for some sort of guidance, some sort of board governance or an organization to overall help you navigate this industry, or did it just fall into your lap? So let's explore like how, because you three were part of the very first. So how did that actually unfold?
For me personally, I was thinking about board governance, and just the question in my head was just like, how does one get on board? Because like you hear of people and like, people like my parents' age and stuff, they're like, oh yeah, board on this and on that. And it was just like, how do you do that? And then what does that even mean? And then I came across a social media post and I was like, oh wow, that's just perfect timing. It was great. And to be able to like actually learn the governance training and to know what goes into a board, what the meetings look like, how to vote, what AGMs really consist of, how to bring emotion up, like all the things that now it sounds so simple. It's like, oh yeah, there's nothing to it. And like the bylaws, oh my God, the bylaws. Oh my goodness. But to actually know the nitty-gritty parts of a board, like I personally feel so equipped to go out and say, if another board opportunity comes up, like I do feel capable to go out and join it and actually like contribute, as opposed to being like a deer in the headlights, like, oh gosh, like I have no idea what's going on, you know? So yeah, it came at a great time.
It's funny that we laugh about bylaws, because I know that it's a sticky topic because it's so broad. But one thing that's always fascinated me is I noticed that, at least amongst the three of you and the rest of the initial junior board members, you're all very tight-knit. You are, it seems like, good friends. How was balancing that in a very professional, formal setting, an environment where you have laws that govern what you can or cannot do, amongst an informal relationship where you all are very friendly outside of the junior board?
Yeah, and I mean, you guys created the laws yourself too, so you're all friends, and then you have to figure.
All to blame.
Yeah.
I think when we were working on the bylaws, first of all, I think it took us a full year. Okay. Took us a full year. It took us almost every meeting that we had to talk about things we agreed with, things we disagreed with, but our disagreements, as Pius likes to say, was constructive disagreements. All right. So when what discourse? Yes, positive. Yes. So when that happened, we understood that at the end of the day, our goal is to get the bylaws done and to get them done in the best way that works for the junior board and the main board as well. So even if we had a discourse in the meeting, we knew that coming out of the meeting, we are still a team, we're still friends, because I think all of us developed that friendship very, very quickly. And coming out of the meetings, and even if we had a very positive discourse and not very positive discourse, at the end of the day, it helped knowing that we're all on the same side. And if we needed to clear some things up with someone, we would just pick up the phone and, hey, by the way, I'm sorry, it didn't come off the way I wanted it to come off, and it solved everything. And it's been 3 years now, right? And we survived it.
Here, yeah.
It's been 3 years. Can you believe that? I can't.
I think that being friends really helps you understand how people function and how they think and how they make decisions. And that will make you stronger in terms of a junior board. And I think it's also like, it's not always 50-50. Like I dropped the ball, Kaitlin would pick up the ball, someone else would drop the ball. Someone else would drop the ball, I would pick it up, right? And it's just a matter of give and take. But at the end of the day, you really care for each other and you care about each other's success. So it's not like it's my success or just Kaitlin's or just MK's. It was a collective success, right? So everyone's going to put in what they can to make it work, just like you guys are doing now. So I think that was a key for me. And, like when it comes to that question of how the JB unfolded, like I think it takes a really open-minded and strong set of leaders on the main board of directors to even ideate about the thought of a junior board, right? Like that is not a normal thing. And yet here we are. So I think, that's a really big deal. The fact that it even got created.
But something that fascinates me is how well we all work together, having to met mostly for the first time. Like we made such a good team, and even to this day, like I tell everybody, I don't think that anybody worked the way that we did, right?
Except for you guys, of course. You're gonna be better, and that's the goal. The goal is for you to be better. For me personally, like the junior board, I've always been so structured, and the deportment and professionalism has been drilled into me from cadets and stuff. But I think with the junior board, the bylaw, just the formalness of it, now that I'm sitting in meetings at work or anywhere else, not even 30 seconds, I know exactly where it's going to go. I know what's missing. I know that it needs more structure or less. It's almost like a flaw now in my head where it's it existed in the past, but now it's even more where I'm I know exactly where this is going to go because we've done this to the nth degree so many times. We've run such strong meetings. We've done the industry relation piece. we've talked with such cool people and we've made things happen that now it's like truly the definition of transferable skills.
Well, Kaitlin, we know your answer, but Yasna and MK, how did you guys find out about the junior board? What did you even think the junior board was before applying, and what made you apply?
So I was the Northern Lights summer student through Canada Summer Job. It was the summer of COVID, 2020 and 2021, because I attended the galas as a cadet. So that's how it all started. I attended the galas starting in like 2014 or 2015. And then I think I just kept tabs on Northern Lights in general. I was a scholarship recipient in 2020 as well. And from there, I was like, let me apply and see what happens. And for some reason, they chose me. And then here we are.
So I went to the last gala before COVID. And because the company I worked for, they were going, and my director, who's my current mentor, he was always very encouraging. And he said, there's a great opportunity. You should go. And I went to the gala and I sat there and I was like, oh my goodness. And I will never forget the gala because it was like all the women that, that got the award. And from there, right after COVID, so I was a little bit down during that time when the applications came out. Again, so like Yasna said, I was keeping tab on Northern Lights. I was seeing, what's happening, what are they doing, can I even get involved? So when the applications came out, I said, I'm going to apply. And I don't know how they chose me. I literally had to, I think it was Kaitlin who called me, and I literally had to pull over to make sure that I just heard what I heard right.
And can I ask, why Northern Lights? Like, I see that, okay, it might have been the gala that connected you, but why specifically Northern Lights? There are many other capable organizations that thrive on supporting women in aviation, but what pushed you to continue and grow with this organization?
I honestly think that the support from the main board, like Piyush, Kathy, especially with board governance. I did a lot of work with Judy on outreach as well. Jazz and I worked with Julie on mentorship. Just the support they had, just how open-minded they are. We had so many ideas, even I'd get tired of myself, right? Like every meeting we'd go to, me and Yasna have this big document with like a million ideas, right? So I think navigating like the way they navigated through those, the way they navigated our own talents, like we didn't even know we could do certain things until we got in those meetings and they said, you can definitely do this, right? So just the encouragement we had, it honestly, it felt like a family. Like I never thought of it, oh my gosh, I have to go do something again. No, I was like always so happy, and I've never been so happy doing something. And even to this day, like now, even though I'm not a part of JB, I still volunteer because I don't think that, I felt this way with any other group of women.
To reciprocate what everyone has said about the gala, I attended a few as a volunteer for raffles as well as like as a student, and I'm completely infatuated with the whole event. It's honestly incredible hearing and being there and seeing all the support. And I just remember like the Northern Lights and seeing their mission and vision statement aligns with the same values that I have. And so for that, I was intrigued with the organization. Of course, do some work with other organizations as well. It's not like exclusively just Northern Lights, but seeing who is on the board and the types of people who were involved, like the board is a really close-knit group, and it's full of the most amazing people in Canadian aviation, I would say. So to be under their wing and to be on a junior board and to get that experience, it was almost like the stars aligning of like, this is like, you couldn't ask for anything better,
We had so much, I think, like apart from the volunteer work we did and some of the other stuff we did on the board, I think the most meaningful to this day also remains friendships. Like we've all become such good friends and we keep in touch. We've flown across the world to see each other, So I think the friendship aspect means a lot to me as well.
I think when it comes down to the question of why Northern Lights, there's something really special about non-for-profit organizations and like just how much you can do with volunteers, right? Just how much of an impact you can make. And that translates into people being there and working with the organization for the right reasons, both the main board and the junior board. I think it goes back to those fundamental skills of I mentioned communication and leadership, but also just being genuine and being in it for the right reasons. And that way you build a better relationship with everyone. And then it turns into a bit of like a give and take of what do you think is better? Like you ask people's opinions. And Northern Lights is very unique because the board is so open to giving us autonomy, but also being so receptive of feedback, ideas, changes that we might want to see, what we want to remain the same. And yeah, not everything is possible, right? Just like any organization or any company, but the genuine effort is there and is genuine. So yeah.
That's true. Even Trisha and I joining the junior board after you guys, we've only felt just endless support from the main board. It's actually surprising how much they're involved and how much they want help. It's an experience I don't think you'll get anywhere else.
And I think you were right, Yasna, that it's hard to even understand that they put this trust in giving a responsibility as big as this to us. It's not like the junior board was created to support the main board. I feel like that was in essence what we were, but we have a lot of responsibilities that, if anything, are at the forefront of what defines the Northern Lights Aero Foundation. Each of you are a part of a very important committee, or were a part of an important committee that I think, again, was at the baseline of the organization. So for them to put that trust in us, it's a big deal.
Trust is the word, right? Like they trust us to reach out to these companies and people without to represent and like have big conversations and big requests and big plans. And that's just not what you normally see. It's a privilege.
Because we did carry the reputation of all these main board members that, like these big wig names, right? Judy Cameron, Kathy Fraser, all these people. And we're holding their reputation by how we present ourselves through this junior board. And yeah, I agree with all your responses. I think it's very meaningful.
Yeah. And now that you guys have all had your experience in the junior board from start to end, how would you describe the junior board to somebody who's only heard of it? Like a student approaches you at the booth and they're like, what is that? What would you tell them about it?
I think if I had to put it in one statement, I would say world of opportunities. Definitely. We created committees, right? Like outreach committee, mentorship committee, social media committee. Now we have a podcast committee, right? So if you look at where we started to where we are, is incredible journey and incredible amount of work that we've done. And what I would tell someone is that the experience that you get learning board governance, like how Kaitlin mentioned, those meetings, they may seem a little much in the beginning when you're trying to learn, but they really prepare you for your professional environment, right? You really put yourself out there when you know how to raise emotion, how to prepare agendas for the meeting, how to time yourself to talk. I think what's very important right now is time management, right? All of us are extremely busy. When we are in those meetings, what it taught us is extreme time management. When I have 15 minutes, I have 15 minutes, right? So I would say it's a great learning opportunity for both professional and self-growth.
I would say it's almost like a sandbox in a way where like you can make mistakes, you can have your successes, you can fall down, someone will get you back up. But at the same time, you really have to be accountable. Like, I remember once I had a deadline and I was like overloaded with my workload outside of Northern Lights, and that influenced my ability to deliver within the board. And it almost felt like I was paralyzed with like my workload, where I just kind of like, I wasn't responding to people. I was like just nothing. And, very quickly I learned, someone reached out to me and was like, hey, like, first of all, what's going on? And there was some things happening, in current events and things like that around the world. And, they reached out and they were like, hey, what's going on? And I was like, oh, like, I'm so sorry, like X, Y, Z. And they were understanding, but they also made sure I understand, like, that's not okay. Like, someone's waiting for your response, right? Like, it's okay if you can't deliver, but let someone know, right? And that was like 3 years ago. And it's not like I didn't know that skill of communication. I just had never had to use that skill of communication in that sort of a setting where I was like paralyzed because of my workload. And like that was pretty much the last time that it happened, because I learned how important that was. So I say sandbox in the sense of like it's all within reason. you don't get in trouble. Nothing happens. Like, it's a fun time. It's a great time, but it's structured enough to give you that feel of like what may happen in 5-10 years down the road.
Well, it's been great getting to know a little more in depth about individually what the three of you do in this industry and what impact the junior board has played into growing all three of you into who you are today. If someone listening out there wants to walk a very similar path to each of you, what's one piece of advice that you'd want to leave them with?
I think while the professional growth is very important, I would say that volunteering and community work really puts you out there. The connections you make, the differences you make in people's life, that, it may be like just another event you volunteer for, but it's the only event they come out for, right? So you can leave a very long-lasting impression on someone just by being there, by handing them a little candy airplane, or by just having a chat with them about what is it you would like to do. So I think that's my advice, that look out and, go out, mingle with the community work, a lot of volunteering.
One thing that I always like, my favorite phrase is volunteering like heals the soul. Like, I don't have a tattoo and I don't want to get a tattoo, but if I were, I'd probably put that on my body. Yeah.
Personally, the way I like to look at it is that not everything is about money. While it's nice to have money and be financially stable, I think that, the feeling you get when you know that you're supporting a community, because that community will show up to support you as well, right? So I would 1000% say that going out, volunteering, getting to know people, and then just someone knowing that they can talk to someone when they go somewhere is a very important thing.
And I think that that's also important for individuals that may not have support from their family or networks otherwise. Like Kaitlin, I asked you earlier if you had any pilots in your family, and I'm similar. I don't have any. So I had to put myself out there to build that network, and we already discussed how small of an industry this is. So I think that's another benefit to helping out your community and volunteering.
Fully agree with everything you said. To add on, in terms of like a student or someone like starting to get in the industry, I would say if you have an opportunity to learn something or to grow, and especially like professional, personal development, I'd say jump on it. You never know what could come from doing even little things, whether it's volunteering at events or if it's taking an extra course or something like that. You never know what could stem from it. And at the end of the day, knowledge is power. So if you can get more education, if you can equip yourself better for the future and for whatever you may end up doing, it doesn't have to be one path. You could find something else along the way. Say, jump on it and go for it.
One thing that I do with cadets, with my air cadets, is interview preparation before their big interviews to go on to glider and power. And during interview, yeah, they have to be they get interviewed by a panel of 3 people. It's a merit interview, yeah. So they have finished their exam. Now it's time for an interview to choose the right people to go get their glider or private pilot license over the summer. Yeah. Yeah. So when I do that prep with them, one thing I always ask them to think about is, close your eyes or keep them open, whatever. Imagine you had just finished your interview. You just finished your interview. You walked out of the room. You closed your laptop. What would you regret not telling the panel? Right? And now work backwards, right? Like, what are some things that are unique to you and your passions that you want to still do? What are those things that set you apart, right? And this applies not only to cadets, but scholarship applicants, right? For the Judy Cameron Scholarship or 99s or Elevate, whoever, right? It's like, what genuinely sets you apart? And it doesn't have to be professional or pilot related or maintenance related or aerospace related. You're a person first. So what sets you apart, and make it genuine. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is try to become the person that people kind of bring up when you're not in the room, right? Like, you've heard that saying before, right? Where it's like you're not in the room, but someone brings you up for a certain opportunity, right? Try and become that person. It doesn't mean that you're just a people pleaser saying yes, yes, yes. One thing that I've had to learn the hard way is that being vulnerable is not doesn't mean you're weak. Like just because you're sharing something about a failure or something that went wrong or a mistake doesn't mean that you're weak. Sometimes it means the opposite. And then the last thing is just, it's not a one-person show. So just bring people up with you anytime you can. Share opportunities. There's enough of it to go around. And that's pretty much it.
I think sometimes when you're starting out, in the industry, for example, you want to ask those questions, but you're very shy. You're shy, or you think that, the next person, they don't have time. And what if I ask them and they don't like the question? Like, well, I'll tell you guys that both my mentors are my mentors because I asked them to be my mentors. And they've been there more than anybody else has been. If I text them right now, and whatever I need, they've been there. And it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't asked. And so you may have a certain perception of a person or situation, but you will never find out if it was true or not if you just don't go up and ask.
And real mentors make you uncomfortable in the right way. They ask the tough questions. They ask the whys. They'll ask it again and again until you have an answer, but it's all worth it.
And you can find amazing mentors and amazing people and amazing women in aviation if you go ahead and join the Northern Lights. So, Oh, yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
No, but, if anyone actually does want to volunteer, you can always reach out to anybody on the Northern Lights at any time, the Instagram account, the email. Everyone is completely responsive and always looking for people to join. So if you're a listener out there who wants to join, the doors are always open.
Well, we'd like to wrap up by extending a very heartfelt thank you to the three of you. You all three took times out of your very, very busy lives, as we've explored, and making your time out just to share a small piece of your world to help impact positively someone else out there that's listening and wants to become another MK or Yasna or Kaitlin. On their behalf as well, we'd like to thank you for your time. And just to our audience as well, again, like Ariane had said, we'd like to echo that the Junior Board and the Northern Lights itself is always looking to grow. So if you are looking for something in specific you'd like to hear with our podcast, or you want to get involved in any way, please check out our socials as well as our website and feel free to reach out to us. And as always, we'd like to wish all of our listeners blue skies and tailwinds ahead. See you next time.
Bye-bye, everyone.